I do think the spirit of freedom is alive and well in a lot of Americans, not a majority, but at least a intolerant minority. I think Bitcoiners attract that intolerant minority and the freedom-loving crew, and I have hope that freedom will prevail at the end of the day, and Bitcoin will be a strong tool at ensuring that. But no, things are pretty fucked if you look around.
This is the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast, a show where average Joe firefighters explore the most important monetary technology of the 21st century. We talk Bitcoin, we talk finance, and we talk shit.
Thanks for joining us here again on the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast. Today we're joined by Marty Bent. Marty has been involved in Bitcoin since 2013. He wears many hats in the space. He runs the Tales from the Crypt podcast. He is co-host of the Rabbit Hole Recap weekly with Matt Odell. Marty also produces a daily newsletter called Marty's Bent, which is chock full of good information on a daily basis. Marty's a freedom maximalist by every measure. He is a genuine asset to the Bitcoin space. He has been involved in mining with Great American Mining, using stranded natural gas to mine Bitcoin with wasted energy. More recently, Marty's been involved with 1031. 1031 is a venture capital group focused on investing in Bitcoin companies and infrastructure. Its name is derived from October 31st, which is the date that Satoshi released the Bitcoin white paper. Pretty cool name and a bit of trivia. With Marty, our conversation explores Bitcoin mining. We talk about what Bitcoin mining is, how it works, who it benefits, and how it provides security for the Bitcoin network. We also cover a bit of controversial ground, wondering aloud if we are as free as we believe we are in the US today. We're constantly reminded how Bitcoin is a shining beacon of hope in a world that sometimes seems to be darkening. Here at BCB, we believe that there's a lot to be hopeful for about in the future, and are especially heartened by the fact that Bitcoin exists, and without it, the world would certainly be darker. Every facet of Bitcoin incentivizes human action so beautifully. We're just in constant awe of how this protocol works and the implications it has on the future. You can follow Marty on Twitter at Marty Bent. And don't forget to check out Tales from the Crypt and his newsletter, Marty's Bent. We'll keep all that stuff in the show notes for you. As always, you can follow us at blue_collarbtc on Twitter, and you can send us an email at bluecollarbitcoinpodcast@gmail.com. Enjoy.
All views and language expressed by the hosts and guests in this podcast are solely their personal opinions and do not reflect their employers or organizations they are associated with. Do not treat any of the content in this podcast as investment advice or as an inducement to follow a particular strategy. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
Marty Bent, welcome to the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast. How are you today?
Doing well, Josh. Dan, thank you both for having me. I'm pumped to be here. It's a beautiful day in Austin, Texas, sitting in my screened-in porch.
So I'm happy to see that you have some furniture. At least you appears that you're sitting in a chair.
Yeah, Pierre Rochard is not happy with me, but I did have to buy some furniture, including some chairs, multiple chairs. But I had to repent by stacking sats. After each furniture purchase, I try to make a Bitcoin purchase to.
We were talking with Joe Carlasare this week. I don't know if you know who he is, but we were talking about how there's just like a gradient and there's different levels and definitions of a Bitcoin maxi. And he was saying, like, by some definitions, I'm not, because I'm sitting in a chair and I have furniture in my living room.
Yes. Pierre would say that he's not in enough. He's short Bitcoin
Because of chairs. Yeah.
So does Samantha live with you? We saw, her on, she was sending some hot thought pictures on Twitter, just drawing people in there. I didn't know if Samantha lives in the house with you or where. If you could get her on camera, we'd like to see her.
Is Samantha my woman doppelganger?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
She seemed to be drawing a crowd on Twitter.
She doesn't live with me. She lives in me. She's a part of me. We have like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or Dr. Hyde, whatever it is.
She's quite the honeypot, we've noticed.
Yeah,
we'd love to talk a little bit about those DMs that Samantha might have dragged in. Like, what was the simpiest thing that you saw come at you? Just sending this some Samantha stuff up on Twitter.
I don't know. There's a lot of horny Bitcoiners out there. And if you're looking to stack sats, you get an AI generated picture of yourself turned into a woman. And the simps will hit you up hard.
Were there people? Do you think that you could have procured some Bitcoin off of that ruse?
You definitely can.
This is a business model we're going to explore.
Not that I would ever do this. I mean, that's like scammers are still everywhere, hopping into DMs with Bitcoin addresses. You check every once in a while. Somebody will like send me a Bitcoin address in my DMs, and I'm like, who's stupid enough to send sats to this? And you go check the address, and there's some sats in it. Maybe it's the attacker themselves filling it up to make it look like others have sent them sats. But
I think we could make the argument that we take maximalism way beyond Pierre, in that you're not a maxi unless you're generating Twitter profiles of hot chicks and trying to rip people off of their Bitcoin. Like, you haven't demonstrated sufficient desperation for sats if you're not doing that.
Well, I mean, he is part of the Nakamoto Institute, which has one of the most profound writings on this topic to date, which is everyone's a scammer. So he should know. He should respect the hustle of the AI generated women hopping into DMs.
Marty, there's one thing I kind of want to get out of the way here early, and that is, generally we're circumspect, we're careful in that we don't generally disrespect or deride our audience. But in this really special case, on this special occasion with you on the show, Josh and I will permit the usage of the word freaks. So you are hereby allowed to refer to the Blue Collar Bitcoin audience as freaks, if you so choose, or if the opportunity arises.
I was gonna run with sick fucks, but I can run with freaks.
That's fair too. Well. Maybe we'll brand that. You'll help us work into that branding.
So, Marty, one blind spot that I have with your story is just how you got into Bitcoin. Could you just give us a quick synopsis? I'm really curious. What was the path that you trailed?
Yeah, so the story starts in high school. I was 17 in the fall of 2008 and just happened to be taking an elective economics class while the world was going to shit. And it was a very good time to be taking that class. My professor was very on top of things. I went to an all boys school, and he was like, "Hey, gentlemen, this is pretty messed up. Like, you should try to go to college to learn how this all works." So I went to college with a know your enemy mindset and studied economics, and was wondering as a young lad, like, what the hell is going on with the financial system? Why did it get to the point that it did in the fall of 2008 and subsequent years? And as I was studying economics in college, and I was actually working at a managed futures fund as well, we index commodity trading advisors into a fund of funds. So I was an analyst there. Managed futures funds, CTAs, trade a lot of currency markets, and I had to understand what was going on in currency markets. And so I followed a lot of tea leaves of the Federal Reserve, Bank of Japan, Bank of England, ECB, the whole 9 yards. Was learning to know my enemy, and was pretty skeptical that the way in which they were maintaining the global monetary system was sustainable. And at the same time, probably around like mid to late 2013, was just perusing the internet, and I think I stumbled upon a story about the Silk Road and started doing research about Bitcoin, and was like, oh, this makes sense to me. I think this is a viable alternative to the enemy I've been studying for years, if you will. And so I think for me personally, just due to my age and timing of serendipitous economics classes and world financial crises, I was receptive to the idea of Bitcoin as soon as I stumbled upon it, because I feel like I was a young person looking for a solution, in Bitcoin, once I saw it, seemed like, oh wow, this may be it.
Yeah. So just speaking about teaching kids about economics in school, I don't know if you saw this circulating yesterday on Twitter, but there's a it must have been a high school teacher who wanted to teach his class something about how socialism works. Did you see this? So
I did.
the kids in the class wanted to curve their grades on average, right? So we said, okay, well, we'll average the class and everyone gets a B because the kids who did well had A's and kids who did shitty had C's and D's or whatever. So the incentivization there was for the kids that studied to not study next time. The kids that didn't study studied even less. And the next average was like a C. And then a few weeks later, the whole class failed. And he failed his entire class to teach them about the way socialism works. And I thought, what a great, an incredible teacher to give the kids an actual understanding, ground level of like exactly where this socialism idea leads in the long run. Just complete failure. And sorry, it was just an aside because you talked about, going through economics in school, just popped in my head, but incredible story.
We need more of these teachers.
Yes,
teaching hard
absolutely.
lessons. Most teachers are focused on grade inflation so that they can keep their jobs and not actually teaching. But yeah, it is a great lesson in socialism. The averaging of grades for a whole class. Yeah, incentives matter. Incentives matter in all aspects of life.
That they do. When did you transition, Marty, into the mining sphere? So when did career change come into play after you saw the light?
So I was working at Barstool Sports and was really into Bitcoin, was writing the newsletter, had the podcast as I was at Barstool. Obviously, I've been into Bitcoin for a while. At that point, it was 2017, 2018, and really I felt passionate about it and really wanted to dedicate myself to that. So like May of 2018, I believe, is when Great American Mining approached me and said, "Hey, we're building this mining company. We'd love to have you on." So I guess that's when I formally joined the Great American Mining team. At the time, it was for their parent company, Buy Sell Ads. But yeah, I guess that's when I started my foray. But it was a slow journey into figuring out Great American Mining sort of niche use case and way to make their path in the mining world.
We're stoked to get into mining. I think we're 30 episodes in to the podcast, and I think this is a bit of a hole. So I think it's a priority for us today to work from. We're going to try for some bare bone basics, if you will accommodate, just to explain to the audience what mining is, mining versus nodes, that sort of thing, and then get into some of what's happening in the energy markets, because it's fascinating to me as an outsider looking in, where I think the future's headed with this, and I think it's going to go from interesting to imperative for all these energy producers. So we're pumped to get into some of those details. Why don't you start, if you don't mind, just what is Bitcoin mining and how does it play into the protocol and network?
So
I know that's
just go ahead and cover it top to bottom for us. We'll sit here for the next 30 minutes and listen.
Yeah, so Bitcoin mining does the way I would describe it, does many things, right? Like helps you reach, most importantly, it helps you reach asynchronous consensus between distributed players in a globally distributed network. And so the way it works, right, the way Bitcoin's consensus mechanism works, it's a proof of work consensus mechanism that runs on a hash function called hashcash SHA-256, which is specific to the Bitcoin network. And essentially what miners do is they have to prove that they do work, that they did something costly to add a block of transactions to the Bitcoin network. And they have to prove that they did something costly because at the end, they get a reward. And on top of that, that reward that comes with the block, that block sits on a bunch of other blocks. And it sort of protects those blocks below them by making it harder to rewrite their transaction history. And so you have to prove that you did some work. So that's hard. It proves that it's hard to rewrite that transaction history, and then you get rewarded for that. That's like a little long-winded answer. What miners are really doing at the end of the day with that hashcash SHA-256 mining algorithm, what they're doing is they're producing cryptographic hashes, trillions per second, in the way that they're allowed to add blocks of transactions to the Bitcoin network is that they find a hash that is below the network difficulty target at any given point in time. So long story short, the miners are producing trillions of cryptographic hashes per second until one finds a hash below the target and goes to the rest of the network like, hey, I have this hash. It's below the target. The rest of the network goes, yes, that is below the difficulty target. You can add a block. They gather and order transactions into that block, broadcast that block to the network, say, hey, here's my block. Let's start building on it. And if we're adding that block, if all the transactions in that block are playing by the consensus rules of the network, it gets added, and that miner who found that hash and produced that block gets rewarded with the block reward, which is a combination of the subsidy at any given point in time, which currently is 6.25 Bitcoin, plus the fees associated with the transactions in that block. And so what that does is the proof of work, again, because Bitcoin has a 10-minute block production target, the proof of work in a globally distributed network actually makes sense. You can come to what's known as asynchronous consensus because of the latency between the block target at 10 minutes. And it basically provides the most fair way to contribute to this distributed monetary system. You have to do some work, which now in this day and age takes a lot of electricity. So you have a initial capex expenditure so that you're proving that you have skin in the game, so that you can participate in this network. You want it to be costly so that it's not cheap to rewrite the history of the ledger, which would render the ledger and Bitcoin, the asset, sort of worthless at the end of the day.
Right on. So I've done a little bit of studying as a history of some of this stuff, and Adam Back, if I'm not incorrect, is the one who came up with this idea, and that was in the 90s, I think. I think originally this proof of work idea was in order to keep people from spamming email accounts. Correct?
Correct. And so that was Hashcash. And so you had Hashcash if you wanted to send an email to somebody, you had to produce a cryptographic hash before being able to send that email. You had to prove that you did some work. Satoshi took that idea and iterated on it a bit, and he added what is known as the difficulty adjustment to that proof of work consensus mechanism, which is actually, I would argue, like the special ingredient to Bitcoin that makes it go round. So we mentioned the difficulty target. That's what miners are producing a hash. That is, they're looking for a hash below that difficulty target. That difficulty target changes every 2016 blocks, or roughly 2 weeks, depending on how much computing power has come onto or left the network. If more computing power comes on and blocks are coming in quicker than 10 minutes, the difficulty gets harder by lowering the difficulty target. And if blocks are coming in longer than 10 minutes, the difficulty gets easier by increasing the difficulty target. And I guess that was one of the problems with the original Hashcash implementation, is that didn't have that difficulty adjustment. So it was, as more bots or whatever started using Hashcash, it got easier to produce those hashes, and essentially wasn't really too costly to send those emails.
So to get into how and why this is security for Bitcoin, which is important for people to understand, what you're saying is all of this electricity, all this capex, you need to buy special computers. You need to have, very, very cheap electricity to be profitable on this. It makes it extremely difficult for an attacker to get on there and cause an issue for Bitcoin, because it would be so incredibly costly. I don't even know what it is. It's got to be hundreds of thousands of dollars per hour to implement any kind of attack. So you can think about this like you would have to be gaining economic value much greater than costing yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars per hour to continue an attack long enough to do something actually negative to Bitcoin, which for just about anyone but very, very maybe nation states at this point, like that's totally out the window.
I don't even argue for that. I think it's out of the realm of possibility for nation states. And that's probably a bit controversial. People say never, but when you take into consideration the capital requirements, the energy requirements, and the hardware requirements to make it happen, the logistics of lining up all three
Yeah.
in an opportune time, considering in taking into consideration the competitive nature of the mining landscape right now.
Yeah, and the global dispersion of the whole
Yeah,
mining network. Yeah.
yeah. I don't think like I'm not worried about a 51% attack. Maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm gullible, but I think things are sufficiently distributed and the loose incentives are such that it really doesn't make even any sense to attack the network via 51% attack unless you're trying to destroy it, which I don't think. I mean, nation states may try to do that, but again, I don't think they can line up.
Are you here to tell us, Marty, that we have indeed crossed the Rubicon? We're waiting for that confirmation from you specifically.
I'm not. I mean, I can't confirm. We'll only know in retrospect. I think we have, and that may be controversial. But again, like if a nation state were to have attempted it, I mean, China had the golden opportunity
They sure did.
earlier this year, and they didn't do it. And now that hash rate's distributing even more geographically, and just as importantly, like the ASICs are so scarce these days that people are treating them like they're a piece of gold on the pile of smog.
It's
They're not. It's gonna be hard to pry them out, unless it's via confiscation, mass confiscation, and even at that point, if there is a mass confiscation, that would be like an alarm bell. It says, "Hey, Bitcoin work." Somebody's
Isn't it crazy to think about what a misstep the CCP made with that whole thing? Like, if there were so many ways that they could have turned that to an advantage for themselves, but they literally just said, mining's illegal. Pack everything up and ship it around the world and take all of this valuable, all these valuable computer systems and send them abroad. And we're just going to give up on this whole thing. Like, they could have seized them all. They could have kept those things in their possession where they could have then taken the consideration to like, okay, are we going to use these for an attack or whatever we're going to do? The fact that they just said, fuck you guys, get out of the country, leave right now is, so I think that is going to be looked back on as one of the biggest miscalculations geopolitically ever, honestly.
Yes, I do as well. I think China's already. So I think they add context around the China kicking out the mining industry. It was right around the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, and the theme for this celebration of the 100th anniversary was harmony. And I guess the CCP and their cronies deemed Bitcoin mining, especially if it was siphoning electricity off from a grid that competed with residential consumers of that electricity, and just cryptocurrency trading in general, were unharmonious activities that they wanted to sort of brush under the rug during these celebrations. And so the celebrations are over, and it seems like they're backtracking on the ban, which is interesting. But again, it is what they did in May and June. Like, you shot yourself in the foot, and I would argue there's no coming back from it, because
Yeah.
No,
why would anybody invest in infrastructure and an operation in China knowing that at any moment they could cause a huge disruption that forces you to spend a shit ton of money to move all your equipment or sell it.
right. Not only that, but I mean, you could be disappeared at any moment. Like you just,
Yeah,
you blinked wrong at the CCP and suddenly you're gone for 2 months like Jack Ma, and you pop up again and suddenly you've changed your tune,
yeah,
It's
yeah.
nuts.
I mean, what happened? I'm still digesting what happened this year. I mean, we've been involved since 2017, so by comparison, we're noobs. But to think about, I mean, you could probably nail the stat specifically about what the hash rate went down 55% this year. I mean, the anti-fragility of this fucking Hydra is mind blowing when you understand the dynamics. I mean, this thing just gets its head severed, and grows back into a more robust monster than it was 6 months prior. I mean, it truly blows my mind what happened this year with China and what happened to hash rate so quickly. I mean, we're already back up. It's crazy.
It's beautiful. And it's very underscored too. Or not underscored, understated. This was, I would argue, like probably like a top 3 stress test of the network in its 13-year existence, almost 13-year existence so far. I mean, obviously you had the SegWit and the fork wars. Then you just had the early days of it being able to be killed in the cradle. Luckily it wasn't. And then this was honestly like just a huge stress test, not only of the network, like would the network be okay with 15 16-minute blocks. It was. The difficulty adjustment worked beautifully, and then the like loose incentives around it, like you have 55 to 60% of the hash rate unplugged at once, and just seeing the free market globally, Chinese miners involved, Western miners involved, European, Latin American, quickly react to accommodate the migration of that hash rate was extremely impressive. So, like the network at the technical level reacted just as one would expect, and it reacted beautifully. And there was the only disruption to transaction processing was a bit of a slowdown for a short period of time, and then the social layer of it, the market layer of it, reacted beautifully, and just by pure incentives, people around the world creating substations, finding excess capacity of electricity at utilities companies, off grid, on grid, and actually having those miners be able to be unplugged, and then some of them were plugged in within weeks, most, as we're seeing, within half a year, which is very impressive.
I'm assuming Great American Mining did okay during this time period. I mean, this was an opportunity for you guys, at least for a number of months, when hash rate was thrust to these lows because of this move by the CCP.
Yes. The difficult, I mean, if you were a miner that was up and hashing as the difficulty was adjusting downward, I believe there was like 5 or 6 consecutive downward adjustments. I mean, that was if you were able to be plugged in and having a static level of hash rate, or even a growing level of hash rate throughout the summer, which Great American Mining did. You were mining very profitably. You were stacking more sats than you would have if that ban did not happen, which is another beauty of the network. Like, and probably a highlight of, not that we were at any political risk here in the U.S. at Great American Mining, but in the future, if the U.S. were ever to do that, it'd be much harder to have an operator off grid like Great American Mine to unplug.
So Marty, Dan and I have been talking about this between each other for maybe a week now. We like to try to steel man our position on things, but if you had to come up with a scenario, like worst case scenario, what could you conjure up that could potentially kill this project? Can you think of a way that could happen?
Easy questions for you today,
Yeah.
Marty. Very easy. Quick answers.
I mean, they're starting to gear it up. It would be the combination of a social attack, which is beginning to happen. Excuse me. You have many in the political arena here in the U.S. trying to paint Bitcoin in a bad light, whether it be the impetus for
Bitcoin caused the crash.
Yeah, destabilization of the U.S. dollar and the financial system at large. You're beginning to hear the likes of Hillary Clinton and others ring alarm bells about this. Again, nothing's further from the truth, but the propaganda arm of the mainstream media and the incumbent kleptocratic elite is very strong and persuasive for the masses, who tend to just take what's fed to them and run with it. So that could be a very strong headwind. And you combine that with like internet distraction. I don't know. Like, it's hard. I'm trying to think now. I'm like thinking on the go.
I mean,
We
this
just,
is the road to catastrophic bullishness. I mean,
yeah,
we've been trying for years now to think through
I think,
viable, practical ways in which this implodes, and that they decrease in number the more you exercise your brain.
yeah, because I mean, it's a globally distributed market, and you'd have to have global coordination, which is literally impossible. You're never going to get that. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. At this point, I think the worst that can be done is just a social attack that slows down adoption. Again, it's not going to kill Bitcoin. We're probably, I mean, there's a good chance we're going to be maligned by the mainstream and treated as enemies of the state and all that. But that's why I do my podcast, to get out in front of this. Part of the reason why I do it, to get out in front of it and put out better narratives, like win the narrative battle. I think Bitcoin's going to win the narrative battle.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially
but
with just the amount of intellectual capacity or brain power that is behind this whole movement is staggering. I mean, you see everyone from, you know, Alex Gladstein's awesome epic pieces to listening to you guys at TFTC and everyone in the middle. We just spoke to, we've spoken to lawyers, we've spoken to finance people. I mean, all kinds of different people, and everyone is aligned in their understanding of this, and everyone's putting out their signal in their own way. And the whole spectrum of people that listen to this, one place on the spectrum or another, they're going to connect with somebody who kind of puts it in words that they can understand, and then that's kind of like what we're trying to do here with this, is kind of connect with just blue collar people in general who are just getting murdered these days. They have no idea why, but they're taking a bath and they're pissed, and this is just some way that we can at least try to help those people out in the cohort that we work with and people in the same mindset.
Yeah.
And
For us, this our viewpoints and the podcast are born out of real life practicality. Like we have people that are, whether we like it or not, leaning on us for advice in this space. And this is why like shitcoins aren't a joke to us. Like we're part of a demographic that just doesn't have money to piss into the wind. Like, and we know real people. We have actual relationship with folks that are aping into totally illiquid
Shib.
shitcoins. Like this is not a joke when you're a fireman. There's not a ton of money to waste. So I think we're just, we're passionate about educating and informing about what the actual innovations are here. And I'm going to segue this into a question, which is, we've talked about mining and proof of work, and there's so many awe-inspiring components to Bitcoin, but proof of work and difficulty adjustment definitely stand out to us about what really makes this a truly unique once in a species discovery. And proof of work is at the core of decentralization. It's at the core of what allows for rules without rulers. And we don't think proof of stake or any of these other projects can say anything close to that. And I want, as another just hard question for you to summarize quickly, but what makes proof of work so unique and so much different than proof of stake or other ways to reach consensus on a protocol?
I mean, I don't think it's hard to answer. I think what it really comes down to is there's execution risk in proof of work that doesn't exist in proof of stake. And executing in proof of work is labor and energy intensive, whereas proof of stake, it's nothing. You literally just send a bunch of tokens to a wallet and you stake. And so like proof of work is literally, you have to prove that you did work. You have to have skin in the game. You have to, like, just putting it most simply, you have to have skin in the game. You have to do things that are productive and actually add value to the network. Where proof of stake, really none of that is involved. I mean, the only skin in the game is using capital to acquire tokens that you then use to exert power over the network. And proof of work, like when I say there's execution risk, there's literally execution risk at every second that you're attempting to contribute to the proof of work mechanism. You have to make sure that your ASIC's up and running. That comes with cost. You have to make sure that you're playing within the rules of the consensus mechanism at any given point in time, the consensus rules of the protocol, excuse me. If you're not, you're losing money, you're expending energy, and you're not going to get a reward for that if you mess up there. and so there's very high risk and a very high incentive to protect the network. And then beyond that, it's much more open. Even if you're a miner running one ASIC, you are contributing to the consensus of the network. It's not outside the realm of possibility to be running one ASIC and to actually like find the hash that allows you to add a block. It could take a while, but like
Quite a while.
you could add to that consensus permissionlessly, and it's more open. You just got to acquire an ASIC and plug it into a wall. Figure out how to plug it into a wall and point that hash towards the network or towards a mining pool that you want to contribute to. And proof of stake, it's the system controlled by the rich that we're running away from. Those with more influence via the accumulation of wealth. A particular stake in a protocol can dictate what happens on that protocol. Or proof of work. Like even if you're a miner with an insane amount of hash rate and you accumulate a lot of Bitcoin, doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you accumulate, if you're not playing within consensus rules, there's nothing you can do to change it.
Marty, if somebody was asking you for advice and they had, well, let's just say 50 grand, right? And they were thinking about, well, should I just buy some Bitcoin or should I buy some ASIC miners and mine Bitcoin? Because it's kind of sort of like dollar cost averaging your way in over a longer period of time. What do you think how would you approach that kind of a question for people that are thinking about that?
I mean, it would default to just statistically, it's probably better for you to just buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
If your goal is to stack as many sats as possible. Again, like I said, it comes with a lot of execution risk. And so if you're not aware of that execution risk and if you're not capable of executing, it would be a waste of sats to get into mining instead of just buying Bitcoin spot and holding it at any given point in time. There's many variables that go into actually mining profitably that you'd have to consider. You need cheaper electricity. Right now, it's very profitable. Like S9s running Brains OS are profitable at something like 16 cents a kilowatt hour right now.
Really?
It's a big anomaly. Yeah.
Holy cow.
So you
But
got to be able to.
that's tip of the spear stuff, right? That very few people have at present day, correct?
No, I mean, you can get S9s from Brains OS Plus on them. And residential electricity is like 11 cents right now or something like that. Most places, I believe.
I'm
in the
paying
US.
10 cents where I'm at.
Yeah, so you can mine profitably with an S9 in your house right now if you wanted to. But again, this is a long-term game. Who knows what the Bitcoin price is going to do? Who knows what hash rate is going to do? So if you're unable to execute at a very high level over the course of many years, it probably makes more sense to buy Bitcoin as opposed to mine it. But again, there's different reasons to do it. Some people want to mine for the ability to acquire Bitcoin in a way that is less invasive of your privacy. You don't have to give up too much information other than email address to a mining pool. And so you're able to acquire sats outside the purview of the KYC AML compliance system. And maybe you have a premium on the value of sats acquired that way in your mind. So there's reason. Again, it's trade-offs. It's personal for everybody. I think, make sure you stack enough Bitcoin. Then I would encourage everybody to experiment with mining, to actually just like buy a miner, maybe buy an S9 or something on the cheaper end and just figure out how it works, just to get a better understanding of Bitcoin, like plug it in, understand how to turn it on and start producing hashes and then point those hashes at a mining pool. I think that'll help you come to some aha moments of, oh shit, this is how it works, and will give you more confidence in Bitcoin, the network. And then maybe you experiment with that, and you become fascinated with it, and you find that you can actually execute on that, and then you can get into it. Yeah, I mean, it is, if you can execute there and execute while paying a very small amount for electricity, it could be very profitable. But again, I just want, out of an abundance of caution, to make sure the audience understands there is execution risk with this stuff. Like, for instance, the electrical infrastructure necessary to actually plug them in. You can't just like get an M30S and plug it into a wall at your house right now.
Right.
You need to get
Yeah.
Yeah, you need
very
some high
particular.
power.
Yeah, you need to get very particular infrastructure in place to even do that. So like you could be out there listening, like, oh, I'm going to buy an ASIC and plug it into my garage like that. No, you can't do that. You need to go spend money to make it so that your power supplies can actually plug into your wall.
Yeah, unplug that hot tub and plug in that ASIC. Or you could have
What is
that hot tub powered by ASICs from some of the shit I'm seeing on Twitter lately. It seems
Spot 256.
pretty sweet.
Shout
Shit,
out
we
Jeff
need one of those
Bell.
at the firehouse.
Yeah, we need one for sure.
We went through an exercise earlier this year, Josh and I, where we did some math, some calculations about whether the two of us should go in on the Compass package that they had. I think you could buy 6 ASICs, and not sure whether our math will play out in our favor or not, but we did decide that it just made more sense to buy more spot Bitcoin given our current situation. And I think what stood out to us is just our inability to predict where hash is going. And I think there's some projections that scare us a little bit that this thing could escalate beyond our expectation. And it was appetizing at the moment we were looking at it because of what had happened in China, but these things weren't going to come online until 2022, and we just decided to buy spot. But I love your point, Marty. Like we talk on the show all the time. Like you need to experiment, like spin up a node, explore, move small amounts of Bitcoin, get to know what's going on. And I honestly, I'll be honest, I personally haven't really thought of it from the mining perspective. Like we're big enough nerds, we're into this enough that even if it's not economically advantageous, like the idea of buying an old miner and doing some hash and pointing it at the network, I'm going to be honest, that has some blood flowing to the lower regions here. I love that idea.
Hard mining talk. It's fun.
I gotta admit something that I'm not very proud of. I've got a little gaming computer over here, and I haven't played games on it in like a year. But it's been mining.
You sure you want to tell Marty this, dude? This could end the conversation. Josh.
I want to see him just exit immediately. I'm mining shit coins with nice hash, and the thing's making me like 4,000 sats a day at this point.
Yeah,
like
I'm not taking
shib over here.
Again, everyone's a scammer. You got to get us sats anyway you can. Matt is out there sliding in the DMs. I think pointing GPUs at nice hash is a bit closer to the middle of the spectrum of shitcoinery than
it is a little closer than I've been in years, but I'm not gonna look the other way when 4,000 sats a day are just what else is this thing gonna do? Sit here and collect dust? It's gonna make me 4,000 sats a day.
It's when we get the sat cent parity, that's it's going to be like a material amount of money.
It is.
I think it will be. It's already paid for itself in less than a year. The whole computer.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So
Mr. Bent,
these things.
Mr. Bent, why don't we? I want to spend some time talking about Great American Mining and what you're doing. Why don't you fill these freaks in, these sick fucks in on what you do, what Great American Mining does, and then we'll kind of parlay that into some of the implications for energy producers and what the future might hold there.
Yes, I will do that. Do this, but I should caveat with I actually have recently stepped away from Great American Mining to join 1031 as a venture partner. I'm still very close to the Great American Mining team and supporting what they do. I technically do not work for them anymore. However, what Great American Mining is, so as a Bitcoin miner, like I said in my long-winded answer to should you get into mining or not, you want to find the lowest cost of electricity possible. And so at Great American Mining, as we were on our journey to find low-cost energy, basically what happened is we stumbled into the oil and gas industry. And we stumbled in the oil and gas industry because in the oil and gas industry, if some of you aren't aware, there's a lot of waste, particularly upstream on the well pad where the oil and gas is extracted. If you don't have pipeline infrastructure, specifically for your natural gas to get it from upstream to midstream and eventually to market, what these producers have to do in a lot of areas is flare that gas. So literally sets it on fire, waste it, and combust it on site, and let the CO2 fly into the atmosphere, because when if it's not combusted, it's just pure methane going to the atmosphere, and the climate hysterics don't like methane. Um, and it is very wasteful. And so what we did at Great American Mining is we said, oh, wow, like you guys are just wasting this energy, this natural gas. What if we were to show up on site, if you don't have pipeline infrastructure, instead of you trying to get that molecule to market, we'll bring the market to you, a liquid market that can help you monetize your natural gas on site in the form of Bitcoin mining. So what we do, and this is again driven by the economic incentive of Great American Mining to drive their all-in electricity cost as low as possible. So we're able to show up right now. Natural gas prices spot at like NYMEX and Henry Hub. I believe they're around like $5 or $6. I haven't checked this week. Uh, the strand of gas upstream that was otherwise being flare, instead of paying $5 to $7 wherever the range of natural gas prices are right now, you can literally pay like half a dollar to 80 cents. Say, hey, I'll pay you 80 cents an MCF for this gas that you're wasting. You're going to be happy because you're reducing your flare, which puts you in a better light of the regulators, and on top of that, you're getting a bit of revenue for that gas, which you otherwise were spending money to combust. And then for us, we're able to mine Bitcoin cheaply. And so we're able to bring generators on site, pipe that gas from the flare stack, from where it would, instead of the flare stack to the generator, produce electricity on site, and then use that electricity to power miners, which are then using either satellite or cellular internet to send hashes to Slush Pool.
I'm curious.
So,
Sorry to interrupt. Did you guys, and I'm sure somebody did the math, you had to have, what was the kilowatt hour by the time that all went through the system and you actually mined Bitcoin, what were you paying roughly per kilowatt hour for that kind of?
well, it depends. I don't think they'd be comfortable with me saying exact numbers, but I will say you can get it as low if you own a lot of the infrastructure, particularly the generator. So that the power generation is the lion's share of the all-in electricity cost, and so it really depends on if you lease or own your generators. If you lease them, it's going to be a bit more expensive, probably in like the 3 to 3.5 cent range. But if you own them, you can cut, I believe, like a penny off your all-in, so you can get from
Wow.
Wow.
like two and a.
Wow.
How in the world is everybody just not doubling down on this? Like,
Yeah.
you guys must have seen competition increase significantly, no?
Yeah, it's been very interesting to watch unfold over the last 2 years. Particularly, I was actually in Houston last night at a Bitcoin meetup, and the Houston Bitcoin meetup's very energy focused and oil and gas focused as well. So that was my second time there. I was there in August, and last night there's a ton of oil and gas folks that are interested in this. So it's happening slowly. I think it'll be one of those gradually and suddenly
Yeah.
things. There's a lot of rumblings through the grapevine that there are big oil and gas companies already doing it. They just don't want to be public about it because they're worried about how shareholders may view it, how the ESG bullshit narrative may view it. But again, it is so obvious to take these previously wasted minerals and turn them into something profitable in the form of Bitcoin mining. Like, it's a no-brainer. And
Yeah.
I can
not
only
only
imagine
that,
how cheap it must be for them if you guys were able to get it at, those prices.
well,
Then
that's
directly from them, I mean, my God, they're paying almost nothing by the time they have their capex all figured out. It's a no brainer.
yes.
When you conceptualize what's happening here, you realize that it is just purely semantic and stupid friction that's in their way. It's or a lack of understanding, because who in the fuck is going to say no to this? I mean, if I understand this business model appropriately, you're literally knocking on their door and saying, "Hello, sir. Would you like free money from shit that you waste anyways? And on top of that, we're going to based on the way I understand this dynamic from having listened to you, like when you take this flared that the gas that they would be flaring, like their uptime also increases. I mean, this is just a win-win-win scenario for every single producer, correct?
Yes, what Dan was describing there at the end, it allows you to keep your uptime. So at Great American Mining, we played a regulatory arbitrage game too, particularly in the Bakken in North Dakota. North Dakota has some of the more strict flaring regulations in the country. So if a producer flares a certain amount of gas, they have to shut down the production on site of everything. So that includes their oil, and oil is their bread and butter. And so they're highly incentivized to reduce their flare as much as possible, so that they never get close to having to just shut down their operations due to flaring too much. And so, yeah, we're not only able to produce a positive revenue stream that was previously a drag on the balance sheet, but we're able to strengthen the main revenue stream of the business, which is getting oil to market, by creating less shutdown risk for these companies in North Dakota specifically. Here in Texas, up to date, they don't really care as much about flaring, but there's actually some regulation in the pipeline, I believe, down here to reduce flaring as well. So it seems like it's a trend that'll continue to increase across the country, and Bitcoin mining solves this specifically.
Solves this. I mean, let's just it solves this. I mean, where do you think this is going with energy? I mean, it seems pretty clear that this is going to be the game theory is going to provide just irresistible monetary optionality for pretty much any and all energy producers in the future. I mean, is that kind of how you see it, or what's your thought on where this is going to go in the 21st century with Bitcoin?
Yeah, so my thesis is that energy producers are going to be the largest miners in the world. Again, they're going to vertically integrate. It's I think there's probably a transitionary period where, like, the miners of the world, the Great American Miners, Upstream, Crusoe, all these companies, we just play a sort of a stepping stone role toward these energy producers, and just consuming and creating internal mining operations. Again, like you mentioned, Dan, like they have the highest incentive because they will be able to produce the lowest cost of electricity because they have access and ownership over the energy, which is the base of that electricity. And so over time, energy producers are begun to become the largest miners. And then the way I pitch it to oil and gas folks is actually gets them jacked up. What you're essentially seeing is the beginnings of a process by which energy companies, agnostic to source, whether it be oil and gas, nuclear, wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, are replacing the Federal Reserve window. So they will be quasi central banks of the future, where they're going to replace the Fed, the ECB, BOJ, central banks as we know them. But a bit of a caveat here: they're never going to be able to like set monetary policy on the Bitcoin network or manipulate or target interest rates associated with Bitcoin. Again, they're replacing the Fed window, which is the base from which money gets to the market. Right now, you have the Fed window, and then you have the primary dealers who have access to that window, and that's a very short list of privileged companies, mainly banks and other types of financial institutions. As we transition to a Bitcoin standard, and energy companies become the largest miners in the world because they are most incentivized and well positioned to take advantage of low cost electricity production, they are going to become, again, the new Fed window. They'll get to a certain scale, they'll be able to have mining pools, and on top, so they're going to vertically integrate. So there's going to be minerals, then you'll have electricity production infrastructure, then you'll have mining infrastructure, then you'll have mining pool software infrastructure on top of that, and then on top of that mining pool software infrastructure, that's where financial services will begin to sprout. So energy companies are going to become these vertically integrated energy producers, and I think banking services in the future. They'll offer derivatives on top of their mining pools, and then stuff like forwards contracts and collateralized lending and stuff like that. This is my thesis, at least. And then,
Doesn't sound like you put much thought into this at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, so they're going to replace the Fed window, and it's going to be beautiful because of what they do, instead of right now where you have the Federal Reserve, then you have their window and their primary dealers who have access to that window. And this is where the Kantian effect sort of emanates from, is the Fed window and who has access to that window. And again, it's a very select few individuals in the current design of our monetary system. Those select few individuals benefit unduly due to the proximity they have to that window, the access they have to that window. As energy companies replace this with mining pools, it really opens up the Fed window, number one, globally, into numerous amounts of players where it's much fairer. And again, these players have execution risk. And so the incentives for them to play within the rules of the Bitcoin network and then add value added services on top of that that actually benefit society are much higher than the incentives of the Fed window and how it works now.
I wonder if the price of Bitcoin or this network effect could grow quickly enough to where the energy companies are not necessarily the ones that kind of take over Bitcoin mining. What if the Bitcoin miners take over the energy companies? Like, what if this kind of
Yes,
happens in the opposite way?
it could. I don't think it will, though. Yeah, I think the energy companies, number one, have a lot of capital, both in the form of financial capital and intellectual capital. Like oil and gas has some of the smartest engineers in the world working in the industry. I think, put simply, I think it's much easier for an energy producer to figure out Bitcoin mining than it would be for a Bitcoin miner to figure out energy extraction and delivery to market.
I was going to say, to summarize what you just outlined, the way I would translate it is, correct me if I'm wrong, but um, it's going to be extremely difficult to nestle up to the teat unless you are the fittest piglet on the free market. Is essentially what Marty Bent just explained to the freaks.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, the trough is getting smaller.
Be a fit piglet.
Yeah. Got to get strong to get to that teat.
Mm-hmm.
There's many things. Yeah. This is such a fascinating subject. The mining rabbit hole in and of itself is infinitely deep. And it'll be interesting. What I just laid out is a thesis. This is what I believe, and how I see things playing out. Will it come true? Who knows? Likelihood that it doesn't, or not likelihood. There's a probability that it doesn't. Um, I have a very strong hunch it will play out that way. But yeah, I think it's an exciting time, and it's no matter how it happens, whether it's miners taking over energy or energy is taking over miners, like net, it's an incredible thing for humanity. Like at the end of the day, whether it's the miners or the energy companies figuring out, they're going to figure out how to be as efficient as possible with the energy we are pulling out of the ground and turning into electricity, and we're going to create more energy, which is a beautiful thing for humanity as well. Increased energy production correlates very tightly with quality of life and human flourishing over time.
There's going to be more milk for the piglets, and it's going to be dispersed much more equitably. Marty?
Yes, we're adding more teats to them.
We're adding more teats. That's what we'll take away from all this.
Let's talk about 1031. We knew you had transitioned there. We did not know that's where you've pointed all of your hash, your personal hash at 1031. Talk to us about that transition, and then what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say all my so I guess back up.
You have this small thing called TFTC too. That requires just a couple hours a week.
So my goal, stepping into the Bitcoin space publicly, has always been to try to help out where I believe Bitcoin needs help with TFTC, with the newsletter and the the podcast, I thought there was a lack of quality information or approachable information. There was a lot of high quality information. Whether or not it was approachable is debatable to many people. I thought there could have been more approachable content mediums for Bitcoin education. That's why I created the newsletter and the podcast to try to bring that to market. And then when Great American Mining approached me, I was very excited to join them because that's another area that I believe Bitcoin needed help with, which is the further geographic distribution of hash rate production. And it grew into helping fight the Bitcoin energy FUD narrative battle that has been developing for about a decade now. And similarly with 1031, I think Great American Mining is in a great spot, and there's been significant distribution of hash rate over the 3-year period that I worked there, and I think we've done a good job of establishing a very strong narrative against the energy FUD as Bitcoiners. And so, again, in my journey to always help push Bitcoin forward, I was like, all right, what else needs help? And for me personally, I know you guys mentioned shitcoinery, and it's one of your biggest goals is helping your audience avoid all of that. And it's hard when you consider the amount of capital that is dedicated to pushing shitcoinery on the world. They've got a very high marketing budget, and comparatively, like shitcoin funds, the amount of capital they've raised, even considering the fact that they only make up like 53% of the overall cryptocurrency market cap, while Bitcoin makes up 47% of it overall, at least last I checked. The amount of capital that's been raised dedicated to building out shitcoin infrastructure is about an order, if not orders of magnitude higher than the amount of capital that's been raised to invest specifically in Bitcoin infrastructure. And so considering that, I believe that there is a lack of quality funding vehicles for Bitcoin focused infrastructure. And I'd like to help push that ball forward. And 1031 is the way in which I'm going to do that. And I think it's going to be a very exciting endeavor. And I think, or I hope at least, that we're able to put a material dent in the disconnection between the amount of capital dedicated towards Bitcoin compared to the shitcoin world.
What can you share anything about what you're up to there? I mean, if you can't, that's fair. But what's exciting? What stones are you turning over, or projects are you guys thinking about there that have you most amped right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can talk about anything we have in our pipeline in terms of future investments, but I mean, I can certainly talk about portfolio companies that are already invested in. And more broadly, I think what excites me about it is, again, I think also, like, as a venture fund, I think 1031 and similar funds like it out there who are focused on deploying capital for Bitcoin only companies, there's actually an advantage from an investor standpoint, because a lot of the hardcore Bitcoin companies that are looking to raise money, they don't want the A16Zs on their cap table. They don't want investors and advisors involved with their companies that they feel are going to pressure them to go down the path of shitcoinery. And so I'm excited because it's going to allow me in 1031 to work with individuals and teams that are building out quality infrastructure for Bitcoin that are philosophically aligned. And I'm very excited about that. And there's a lot going on, whether it be in the mining world, on the Lightning Network, and on financial services. So disclaimer, sponsor my podcast, but also a 1031 portfolio company, Unchained Capital. I mean, that's an example of a company that we've invested in multiple rounds, and that's because we believe that they are approaching Bitcoin financial services in the correct way, particularly around private key management and ensuring that their users have control of their Bitcoin via their collaborative custody model with their 203 multisig. they really realize that Bitcoin is super collateral in a world that is in desperate need of good collateral, and they're building products around that that allow Bitcoiners to leverage their Sats to either go get loans or um, like put into an IRA as well. We've invested in companies like Samurai Wallet, which are providing privacy tools for Bitcoiners, which we think is important. So yeah, we've invested in some mining companies, Giga Energy, based out of here in Texas. They're doing something similar to Great American Mining with off-grid gas. And yeah, so those are, we're looking to support, again, the individuals and teams building out the critical infrastructure for Bitcoin. And we believe that if these teams are supported and they're building out this infrastructure, at the end of the day, it's going to drive value back into the network overall. So we think it's a great way to help push hyper Bitcoinization forward as well.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more with your we're big Unchained and Samurai fans, but we've both gone down the path of setting up vaults with Unchained, and Josh and I are in alignment that it's an incredible solution for a lot of people that want sovereignty but are a little bit overwhelmed with the true multi. I mean, it's a true multi-sig, but those that want a little bit of hand holding, what a great product.
You should start there, but you should you should definitely run your own node and learn how to use Sparrow or Spectre or any of those. I highly recommend that.
Certainly. Yeah. And I think that's another thing to realize. There's a spectrum of this. Like I have my
Yes.
stack where I have my node connected to my sovereign setup where I keep some sats outside of my house, of course. But then I do it. Like I have had to use Unchained's loan desk to take out a loan using sats, and it was flawless. And I hold a key in that 2 or 3 multi-sig quorum, so I can make sure that my sats are in the multi-sig wallet that they say it is, and it is. And then beyond that, like for me personally as a father, even though I'm a hardcore Bitcoiner too, like I am very much looking forward to, obviously Unchained's gotten into the IRA services, and I've talked with Drew and Joe and Parker. Like I think they're going to get more into estate planning as well, and somebody who's a father and wants to hand down my sats to my children,
That
I
is so
think
needed.
a dedicated service for that is something I would certainly use and leverage. So yeah, I mean, I think they're doing it the right way. Not only is 1031 invested in Unchained, but I consider the team, a lot of the team members there, very good friends. Drew, Joe, Parker are doing incredible things. They're good Bitcoiners. They're good people. They're good fathers. Or actually only Joe's a father, but they're good people.
Marty, before we go, Dan and I try to avoid hyperbole as much as possible, but we can't help ourselves sometimes. What's your price prediction for end of the year?
I don't know.
I put you on the spot here.
I don't know. maybe 75. Maybe, I don't know. I don't like price predictions.
We love to put people on the spot on this.
They only make you look bad unless you nail it. I don't know. Higher than here, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I would imagine we'd be higher than 56,000.
We're gonna call this episode "Marty Bent predicts 200,000 end of December."
Yeah, it'll be our highest listened to episode for sure. It'll usurp everything else. Wait, we got to actually. I got one more. There's this guy. We put ask people for questions, and there's this dude, some guy on Twitter. I think it's like Matt Odell or something like that. He was asking if we live in a free country.
This guy's a troll.
That's what he wanted us to ask you. Do we live in a free country, Marty Bent?
It's up I don't know. It's up for the people to decide. Are they going to take their freedom? Right now, no, it doesn't seem like it.
It's up to the sick fucks what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Oh, on that same note, is Texas the best place to be when this whole country balkanizes? What do you think?
I mean, I hope so, because this is where I am and where I live. I don't know. Again, it's heavy stuff. We don't live in a free we don't live in a free country.
Spectrums of decentralization, spectrums of freedom.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to put it in the context of the freedom that we had when the founding fathers were around, we're nowhere near that. We're only getting further away from it. I came to Texas. The silver lining of this, it seems that states are beginning to push back against the ever increasing encroachment of the federal government. The only silver lining of COVID, in my mind, is states asserting their autonomy. Obviously, you had Florida, Texas, place like South Dakota, Wyoming stepping up, Nashville, Kentucky, or excuse me, Tennessee, Kentucky stepping up to ensure freedom lovers that they would at least attempt to preserve their freedoms. I do think there's going to be a balkanization. I don't, in the federal context, no, we don't live in a free country at all. In fact, it's turning into Soviet Russia. I've been warned by people who grew up in Soviet Russia and I had to live through that. They're describing, they're not describing, they're saying what's happening here now is what happened to them when they had communism come to their neck of the woods. We do have that happening here in the U.S., but again, another caveat to that is I do think the spirit of freedom is alive and well in a lot of Americans, not a majority, but at least a intolerant minority. I think Bitcoiners attract that intolerant minority and the freedom loving crew. And I have hope that freedom will prevail at the end of the day, and Bitcoin will be a strong tool at ensuring that. But no, things are pretty fucked if you look around right now here in the United States and globally. Freedom is rare these days.
Freedom is the army showing up to take you to your COVID quarantine camp in Australia. That's freedom.
Yeah, if you were within like 60 yards of somebody who tested positive with a test that probably isn't that reliable. I mean, it could come to the U.S. too if people don't push back. That's the one thing too. Again, I think the spirit of freedom is alive in many Americans today. This is why I think you're seeing a lot of disruptions in the airline industry. They're saying it's bad weather, but it's obviously
it's
people
pilots telling them to
up,
fuck off.
Yeah,
standing up and saying no, I don't want this. There does seem to be, thank God, a rebellious tilt to a lot of Americans still refusing to cave to the vaccine mandates, which is good to see. Again, I don't care whether you take the vaccine or not. You should not be mandating it on people.
Couldn't agree more.
agreed.
Yeah.
Here.
Well, Marty, thank you for
I'm
your
sorry that
time.
was depressing. I'm optimistic about the future. I think
Optimistic
just
about
objectively freedom. No, we are not free.
And we have this cool little technology called Bitcoin, Marty. And I truly believe that I think this protocol may have the chops to incentivize the spirit of freedom to continue to proliferate. At least that's the Dan glass half full perspective. I think I would feel differently without this network in existence.
Yeah, it's a shining glimmer of hope, that's for sure.
It's becoming not even a glimmer anymore. It's becoming a fucking steady stream, a strong bolt of light, if you will. We're gonna win, boys. We're gonna win.
Yeah.
I know it's
there is a giant kraken of the deep that roams every day, and if you are a sea-fearing individual, you need to batten down your hatches because it's coming for you.
Yeah,
this thing ain't no joke. Marty, this is a privilege, an honor for both of us. We appreciate your generosity with your time. We're excited about what you're up to. We look forward to years more of tales, and we wish
we'll
you
be
all
joining
the
you in
best.
Texas when they start building the internment camps up here. I'm bailing, man.
Well, hey, you want to get out before they start building the internment
As
camp,
soon as they break ground, man, I'm out. It's happening.
Well, Josh and Dan, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you guys for doing what you do and spreading the word. The more people spreading the good Bitcoin word, the better. We need as many people as possible. Again, we live in interesting times, and it's imperative to push Bitcoin forward if we want to live in a free world in the future.
Well said. Thanks
Amen.
again, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening into the show. If you enjoyed this discussion, be sure to subscribe on whatever app you're using for podcasts. And if you have an extra minute, go ahead and leave us a review. You can also follow us on Twitter. We're at blue_collar BTC. We invite questions, comments, and inquiries of any kind, and our email is bluecollarbitcoinpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to you joining us next time on the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast.